Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Data Science Hangout. If you're joining for the first time, it's great to meet you. I'm Rachel. I'm the host of the Hangout. If this is your first Hangout, what is it? This is an open space for the whole data science community to connect and chat about some of the more human-centric questions around data science leadership, questions you're facing, and what's going on in the world of data science. So we want this to be a space where everybody can participate and you can ask questions 3 different kinds of ways. So you can jump in live and just raise your hand on Zoom and I can call on you. You could put questions in the Zoom chat and feel free to just put a little star next to your question if you want me to read it out. Maybe you're in a coffee shop or your dog's barking or something. But we also have a Slido link where you can ask questions anonymously too. And Tyler will put that in. Oh, she already did it. She put that in the chat right now. Just like to reiterate, though, that we love to hear from everybody, no matter your level of experience or your area of work. You will notice that we had a little bit of a last minute change in plans today. And I'm so excited to be joined by Michael Chow, who is stepping in as our featured leader today. So Michael is a software engineer at RStudio and previously led the data science team at California Integrated Travel Project. And Michael, I'd love to just turn it over to you and have you kind of introduce yourself and share a bit about the work you do.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. So I did a PhD in a different life, PhD in cognitive psychology. And then I sort of flew the coop to industry where I worked on educational tools and tools to measure data science skill. And then, switched to working on building out a data science team at California Integrated Travel Project. I'm really interested in but I will say I love the tidyverse. I'm really interested in sort of like how people can do analytics fast and what makes like really skillful data scientists and data science teams. So I'm really excited to be here. And now I'm working at RStudio as an engineer. And then as a kind of weird side thing, for the past years, I co-directed an org called Code for Philly, which just tries to connect volunteers to nonprofits in Philadelphia to throw like experts or like 100 volunteers at really impactful projects in the city. So happy to be here, really excited to, connect with people in data science and, discuss kind of all the weird parts of data science and data science teams.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. While we're waiting for people to jump in with their own questions, I'd love to kick it off by asking you, what's something that you're most excited about in regards to data science and thinking about the year ahead?
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of like two things. One is, and this has really been growing over time, but I think tools like DBT and the tools of like the modern data stack to really build out a very nice warehouse quickly are just absolutely killer. I think that the amount of ground a person can cover once they've kind of like wrangled these tools is so great. I'd say on the other hand, I still like for the past decade have felt so excited about tools like dplyr in R and the tidyverse. And on the other side, like its ability to let people query data freakishly fast. So I feel like DBT is kind of the new thing I'm excited about. dplyr is the thing I've been like excited about for the last decade somehow. And it's just stayed on like the top of my list.
Awesome. So I've been hearing about DBT a bit more, but I will admit I don't really know exactly what it means. Could you explain it a bit more?
Yeah, I would say so. Like something I've seen before is like imagine you're a person building out like, so you've got all this data into a warehouse. It's just loaded up. It like needs to be cleaned and made into like a data mart so people can, like end users can consume it. You're a person in charge of that. Like there was a point in time where it wasn't crazy that might just be a folder of SQL scripts and then some weird custom script to somehow like chain them all together. And it was just absolute chaos. So DBT, they're really focused on analytics engineering. I shouldn't put that in air quotes, it's a legitimate thing. But basically, how can you have a sane set? I would say, like, loosely, like, how can you have a sane set of SQL scripts that very cleanly, like, orchestrate, like, all your cleaning in the warehouse, like the whole thing of, like, I create a table and then another table depends on it and another table depends on it. That's the, like, high level part, is this kind of dependency graph. But also they've really refined, I think, the practice of warehousing, and like the classic moves you'll need to do, a lot of those have made it into DBT. So it's easy just to stamp down kind of like a thing. Like they have snapshots, and that's, I need to stop air quoting things, but so that's like a move you can do now with DBT, and it's super handy.
Cool, thank you. I know just before people were jumping on, we were talking a little bit about Code for Philly too, and you told me a pretty awesome story about some of the work that you did with that organization. Would you be able to share that example with us? The COVID example?
So Code for Philly, it's weird because we spend a lot of time, like, talking to nonprofits and learning about their problems. I would say the biggest problem we have is just connecting volunteers with something that's impactful. Like, a lot of volunteers that used to come in would just have kind of random ideas they wanted to build, but they wouldn't be as focused on kind of like what a lot of nonprofits at Philly were hitting. But from time to time, we've been able to really connect on great partnerships. So one was right at the beginning of the pandemic I don't know how many years, at the beginning of the pandemic, it's like March 2020, we're like deep in our apartments, and we connected with Penn Medicine to create a COVID monitoring dashboard. So actually a dashboard for capacity planning for hospitals. And that was like such a stressful, but helpful project, to like connect with this team, like data science team, that just wanted to put up a dashboard and help them make it open source, and then wrangle like all the people who came in. So Linode came in and they provided resources. We started getting like 300 people a week coming into our Slack, which was like 10%. That, like, we have 5,000 people, so our Slack started growing and we had to like moderate. So it's a lot of just how do you connect people with these things and help them grow. And really it's like a lot of Slack channel wrangling and kind of like doc writing. But that to me was like a nice Code for Philly project. We're able to just connect two groups of people and then work on all the communication and kind of like untangling that comes along with it.
Cool, thank you. I saw Libby, you put a question into the chat if you want to jump in.
Sure. Yeah. I was wondering if you've ever had to defend your psychology background as being data related. This happens to be a conversation that I was just having this past week with a lot of my friends in the data space that are from psych, sociology, demography, like applied demography, that have had to kind of defend their education as being quantitative. I'm just wondering if you've ever hit that.
Yeah, it's such a great question. I feel like, like my whole educational background is tuned towards, I would say, like, psychology is the most important thing I think I bring, but everything else is just like getting in the door to defend against that, like to bring in that reality. So I double majored in undergrad in psychology and statistics, and then I did a pretty computational PhD in psychometrics. So that's sort of the methodological side of psychology. But I say this because actually, like that, a lot of engineers are happy with that. They're like, math, that's great. But it's hard to explain. Actually, I think the most important parts I got were the psychology parts, like research and design, and actually like being able to decompose weird, hard problems and concepts. So yeah, I think it's a never-ending battle to like elevate what psychologists do. Like I think every discussion about metrics is kind of a psychological discussion. But yeah, I don't think I've gotten a lot of traction by saying like, I'm a psychologist, I'm ready to help with your metrics problem. It's more been like somehow going in the back door, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one of my advisors in grad school always said like empaths or empathetic people always make the best data scientists, because you can kind of put different hats on to put yourself in different shoes and being able to analyze all of that data. So I think like having psychology or having a different background, not only like does it bring new questions, but you can also relate it in different concepts, right? So it's super cool.
Yeah, I think totally. And I think the psychologist side also hits a lot of really good product management type skills, that I think psychologists are very good at like wrangling the high level problems and like cohering a whole like set of problems into kind of like a plan or coherent whole. So I do think like I've like, there's a couple of data scientists, like junior data scientists I've been mentoring, and to me they have like really great psychology skills. They're really good at breaking down the problems. And so I'm really hopeful for psychologists as people who can make not necessarily great data science managers, but like do that weird data science work of like lay the problems out and help things like move along beyond like coding things up.
I also think you guys get a lot more experimental design than people realize. And it's so important. It's something that a lot of other people in other disciplines don't get. And so it's something you guys can bring to the team. I know from my psych teammates, that's something big they bring to the team. It's really, really wonderful. It's interesting that people come up against that kind of barrier sometimes, because there should be more visibility into it. You guys are so important.
I really love this topic too, of like the skills that we have that make us very successful in what we do that might not necessarily be the skill that people think on paper would make you successful in it. I see, Andy, you put a comment in the chat too. Did you want to jump in?
Oh, just this is echoing really true for my grad experience. I have a master's degree in system science, and so it's the basis of looking at things as systems of interacting parts, and how you can look at the parts and the wholes of things, and that's a lot of systems thinking and systems theory, and it actually that program came out of a psychology PhD program at Portland State University, and so I just did, a lot of this discussion is really ringing true for me, and I did an applied statistics alongside of it, and so I got the experimental design and some of that, and that's really where that was my entry to R and data science. And so but I entirely lean on that for like the access to work in projects and stuff, and the system stuff is just like, oh, you can do systems mapping. Awesome. And it's like, well, the way that we have mental models that, that are very relevant in what we're studying here. And so being able to talk about those and use those as well. Like, I think it's really valuable, but it's funny how much I have to explain it sometimes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Thanks, Sandy. I see, Sam, you have your hand raised too, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic, and it's something that I've been maybe struggling with is maybe too strong, but dealing with is sort of maybe not strong enough at work recently, where some of these things that aren't like hard data science skills that are more like soft skills I'm finding really undervalued where I'm at, especially in like the technical teams of things. So I work on a team of data scientists and software engineers. And I'm sort of wondering, like, I really think that soft skills are really valuable. And that's maybe my like private liberal arts undergraduate degree sort of coming through. But, how do you get more buy-in from people on like basically getting them to basically believe that soft skills are important and that it's important to spend time on them as well as on like the hardcore, like data science, software engineering stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm curious, like what kind of soft skill you're thinking, or like what kind of problems you're thinking even for like where the soft skills would really come to bear.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff I'm thinking about and that I've been struggling with is specifically when it comes to record keeping. So things like taking minutes at meetings, making agendas for meetings, commenting your code, documenting processes or workflows, things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I will say, like, from my last job, the person I meet with regularly right now is like a junior data scientist whose like standout skill was, amongst other things, like record keeping. So like that, I think that's huge. I wouldn't be surprised if like in my view, like a lot of those things, almost if you can like wrangle them into existence, like if you can make it happen, or just like they're a void and someone will fill it eventually, or when it like once the note taking happens, I think that people really tend to rally behind it. So but I'd be curious to, yeah, I'm really curious about situations where do you mean like the team, maybe like you have a team of data scientists and it's hard to like get people note taking, or?
Yeah, so I'm by no means like a leader of a team of data scientists. I am definitely like one of the people being led. And we sort of have like a hierarchy where there's like a manager, and then there's a data science manager and a software engineering manager. And then there's a few people floating around underneath, and I'm sort of floating around in the data science area. And I've only been at this company for about a year and a half right now. And I'm just finding myself really like, I can't figure out like what processes are, or, you know, what people are trying to do, or, you know, basically how to communicate like other stuff people are working, what they're working on, and sort of where they need help. And if somebody needs to switch to a project, which happens quite a bit, getting context on that project is really difficult, things like that.
Yeah. Thanks. That's really helpful to hear. I think like teams, and they're like a few different, it sounds like, pieces involved, like some engineers, data science, their managers, but maybe a lot of cross-cutting concerns. I think one of the most impactful things I saw was there was this really great consultant I worked with last year named Kane Bacigalupi, and they kind of blew my mind. They introduced 15 minutes daily stand-ups, and I, prior to that, hated stand-ups. But the one thing they introduced that really amazed me was they said like, and it's just stand-up. It's like 15 minutes. It has to end in 15 minutes. And you can't have like a product manager trying to work a backlog in the meantime. And then I realized that every stand-up I didn't like did have a manager trying to like update the status of different things. But to me, it's like game changing to just get people in a room for 15 minutes just to say what they did. Like that's the goal. Everybody says what they're working on. And that for me has been really helpful for like figuring out, you have like this big stew of people sometimes hitting different things, that if you hear what people are working on, oftentimes it's enough to figure out like, oh, who do I have to connect with afterwards? Or like, who should I like chat with? I don't know if that's useful, but that really kind of like changed my work life, because it's hard to get people to take notes, or even to know where the notes will live, or that they'll be relevant. It seems like just getting people in a room, and not making that an adverse experience, like just make it a very simple experience, sometimes really like cuts down this insane like issue of like needing notes, but notes go out of date or often aren't. Just right, you know, like the right grain for us often.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sam. I see there's a lot of people that have some thoughts in the chat too. And Caitlin, I was wondering if you want to jump in too.
Sure. I hope you guys can hear me okay, because my Wi-Fi is not very good. But
yes.
Okay, cool. So I deal with that too. So I work on a team of like 4-ish data scientists as well, and we're always kind of transferring code with each other. And I think even though we're kind of working on the same thing, there's so many different ways to tackle the same problem, and like there's so many like it's a really tough situation. But I think even just like trying to interpret other people's code or what they're doing, what I found most helpful is honestly, just like Michael said, jumping on a call with someone and almost like over communicating, because it's a win-win for everyone. Like you'll understand the code and then be able to do like your job better. So I think it's never a bad thing to over communicate or just literally ask as many questions as possible.
We're learning that here too. More communication is better. I see, Andy, you had some other thoughts on it too, if you want to jump in.
Well, just the sometimes changing the label of what you're doing rather than saying that the soft skill is your coordination efforts. Using like project management language or something like that just gives people a little more access to like seeing the value in what you're doing. That's I guess it was just a comment that it sounds a lot like the work is in the spirit of like continuity of operations. And so if sometimes it's just helping folks see where the value is compared to what it is that they value. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I don't want to jump from this topic too quickly if there are other thoughts too. I was curious, Michael, what it's been like for you coming from a team, from leading a data science team back into like more of an individual contributor role.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think RStudio is so, in my mind, the Tidyverse team is so great. I almost like it, and I gave a talk last year at RStudio Conf on porting. Sorry, I have a window over here with a fat bird outside, so it's like cat TV.
Love it.
Yeah. Actually, I would say like it's been really nice, and I think that the challenge managing was like I was learning a ton basically about like data engineering. I had like great people at all parts of the stack, and so I was learning a lot about like data engineering and data science and analytics, but not a lot of time to kind of develop or really take a lot of those ideas and put them together in tools. So it's been really nice to be on the Tidyverse team, and now just like seeing people take a lot of insights and build tools out of them has been really nice. Yeah, so I would say the thing I miss from managing is like really smart people telling me how wrong I am about a lot of things. What I really like about the Tidyverse team is now there are these incredible people like trying to just take these like insights and kind of like bottle them into tools so that everyone can kind of like use them easily. I definitely won't miss all the meetings though. Managing was a lot more meetings. Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. And I get to ask you all these questions if people don't have other ones. So reminder, you can always just raise your hand, jump in, put it in the Zoom chat, or you can use Slido too to ask anonymously. But when you just said that, it was making me think when you said like a lot of people telling you how wrong something is or giving feedback, like when you were a manager, how did you handle those conversations and creating an environment where people felt comfortable to do that?
Yeah, I think one really helpful framing was like giving people an escape hatch for criticizing my work, which was like, hey, so this is what exists now. And like it kind of like I had this weird trade-off where I was like one person, but like my goal was to help the organization see how useful data science could be, so we could bring you in to like make it extra great. And I think that the framing of like, so what I did was actually pretty bad, and it was just to like get the vision out that we needed you, and now you're here. So I think that's helpful, because people could be like, hey, I'm really glad that you like did this work and like pushed out an insight. It like all needs to be fixed now. Like especially like the data engineering, I do more like data science analytics, I think. So they're able to be like, I'm glad that this worked and like something came out. And now that I'm here, like we need to just rewrite it to be like robust, where robust is a code word for like, what you did was not super great and will probably break in like unforeseen ways. But I found that helpful, just to like actually for both of us to have that like, hey, I did this, it's probably bad. I was really focused on pushing things out, and I'm glad you're here to like make it right.
That's awesome. Thank you. Libby, I see you just raised your hand.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Michael, you brought up something that I've been talking with people about this week as well, which is the structure of data science teams, and how some teams are like just data scientists and they've got an IT team that will support them and implement models and do the engineering side of things. And there are some teams out there that have data scientists who are also data engineers. And then there are teams where there are both data engineers and data scientists working together in tandem on things to make sure that stuff doesn't get stuck in like a development pipeline and have to be refactored before deployment. What are your thoughts on structuring data science teams, including engineering or not?
Yeah, it's like it's such a tricky problem, I think. And there are a lot of different pitches on structures. I listened to, I know Jacqueline Nolas talked a bit about it on a data science hangout. And she said like that she started believing that there were virtues to different ones, but ended up sort of sold on the decentralized model where data scientists are embedded in teams. I think I agree that data scientists and analysts should be sitting with the teams that they're pushing out reports for. It just, I mean, otherwise I would be trying to send people into those teams to figure out what they want and their priorities. I think a good data scientist works with like a PM or whoever's leading the team to like both like push up metrics, but also kind of like help change the roadmap. That I think it leaves the tricky question of like, where should data engineers be, and how should they interact with the teams? It seems okay that today, like data engineers, I think are doing more like tooling empowerment. So I think they're a good team to have like, yeah, it's okay to have them a bit more centralized and like connecting to the data scientists to like enforce best practices or enable like new pieces for them. I think that's a nice model. Like data analysts, data scientists live in the teams, and data engineers are kind of like spokes of a wheel where then the data scientists connect with them and they work closely to like enforce best practice and enable like new important things. I'd be curious what people use though. Sorry, now I have a cat just right here. So this is
Tatsu, I see you had your hand raised. Was it on this topic?
Yeah, I think it's related to a lot of things, right? I think, largely what you're saying, Michael, is kind of use your tools at your disposal, right? And I think that, people like Rachel and myself who aren't necessarily in a standard data scientific sort of role, but, role where we kind of interface with a lot of folks in different functions in the company. And I think it's really important to, we've talked about this before, but it's important to find your translators, right? And it's important to kind of use the power of feedback. I know Rachel's a huge proponent of taking feedback and actually making it into something actionable. But like really, like, you know, reach out to those people, right? Like, you know, Michael and I recently worked on something together where we were trying to get some feedback based on something that he's working on. I feel like I think Michael's pretty amazing at actually putting things into action as well. But you know, I think that you have a lot of folks out there that are willing to help you do what you need to, and you don't need to be so kind of, you know, focused just on what you're doing. I think you'll find that if you're able to kind of get somebody from a different perspective that can also kind of level with you, it's really a lot easier to like make something happen. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there.
Definitely. Thanks, Tatsu. I see, George, you have your hand raised to share some thoughts too.
Yeah, I thought that was quite cool talking about where the data scientists and where the data engineers go, because so I deal with just insurance companies, but I go from insurance company to insurance company, and they're non-life companies, and I'm dealing with the actuaries mostly. And pretty much the model that I'm trying to get more insurance companies to take in is because they've come from this really traditional landscape where you've got lots of actuaries working on lots of Excel spreadsheets, and it's been at the limit of that for years, but it's at the limit of that, and there's a real lack of knowledge share and tool sharing, and that's where the data science element comes in. But for me, within the organization, you need to have this team that's, I guess it's kind of like a mini spoke, if you will, because they're central to the actuarial team, which is a spoke of an insurance company. But within that team, I think for the speed of integration, especially sort of where it is now in the life cycle, I think you need a data engineer, you need a couple of data scientists. They need to be a kind of a jack of all trades around sort of start to finish. But the most important thing is they need to be remote from the IT team, and they need to be with the actuarial team. I think if it's too far removed and they're back with the IT team and stuff, you end up with the old problems and they don't get the business concept, and then you have a migration or something and it doesn't work and it goes back to square one. But this time everyone's really livid about transformation and bringing in data science because they did it once already and it didn't work and it cost X million dollars and they don't want to go again. So I think, for me, within my teams, it's all about getting enough skills so that they can get stuff done, especially proof of concepts. And then if you need to go back and sort of take stuff back at a step, then that's where you might look at that centralized model again. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it and my experience.
I think that's like spot on. That the more central it is, it's like kind of a diverge converge thing, that a central team helps like practice converge to like what they see as like best practice. But in your case, if you're describing like pushing out something new, or, you know, like getting something out that requires data engineering, that it seems important. That's like kind of diverging and going into exploring a new area or a new lane of work. Just setting a data engineer there to allow it to actually do whatever it needs versus like do what a big body thinks is.
Yeah. But if you want to bring it back and you're right, converge to the company wide and make sure that everything's sort of on the same platform, then it's important to bring it back again.
Yeah, but that I think it's spot on, just making sure that converging back kind of doesn't stifle creativity or prevent a team from doing the right thing, kind of, even if it breaks from what's happening now.
Yeah. Manny, I saw you unmuted. Do you have anything to add to that?
I do, and I don't. I guess I'm on the IT team right now, and I guess there are thoughts of like, okay, well, you know, are we speaking the same language? Because I feel like being in data science, and it's such a new field. So I'm in data science for real estate. It's kind of a new field, and it's new for the company too. So it's almost like I can fit in anywhere, but nowhere at the same time. It's kind of how I feel. So I guess there's like a sort of identity of where does data science fall. It's kind of like we know we need it, and so does it fall under IT or does it fall under a corporate operations and it's interesting because like the IT team is fantastic, and they're they're very structured, and they're kind of like they've been in the business forever, and data science is so fluid and so creative and so kind of like non-structured at the moment that you kind of have to look at where it actually does fall. And I don't know that I have the answer for that, but I can agree with George and Michael and everybody else that kind of chimed in. So that's a comment, I guess.
I think we covered everybody who wanted to chime in on this topic too, but a great discussion point. And I see Caitlin, you had another question in the chat. Would you want to jump in?
Sure. So yeah, Michael, I was just wondering if you've ever used data science within the psychology domain.
Yeah, I worked on a skill assessment tool that like an adaptive assessment, which was sort of right in my wheelhouse in psychology. And so there we had a small team of like me, an engineer, and some content creators. And we were just working on basically a new product. But it was different in that the company hadn't focused on like psychology things. And so the whole idea of like a test and the psychology classics like test, reliability, validity were new to the company. And so that was an interesting one where we both had to prepare the data coming in to be quick to analyze, but also sort of like lay out the concepts behind it, and kind of roll out like an adaptive testing thing. I think the most interesting thing there that happened is I produced a lot of like long form articles about it at the company. So about like, how does this thing work? Showing like it in practice in our data. So there's this thing called so for one, like the cold start problem, that means if you start rolling out a test, you don't have any data on it. But if it's an adaptive test, you kind of need data to do the right thing. And so an adaptive test, it gets better over time, as you learn how hard the questions are, and things like that. So there, I had to like write articles to the company about like, what can we do in this case, with a little bit of like psychological theory. I will say, I think the most interesting thing I took out of it though was it was the opposite from psychological research, where I usually went like more complex. I would like research, like usually dive deep into something. A lot of this case was about saying like, we could go deep, but we like shouldn't. Like you might think that we should go really hard into like reliability and do the exact right, like most rigorous measurement. But we like shouldn't do that because we're building like a test product. And so actually the scientific rigor is only like a piece of this kind of like emerging story. It would be really bad if we had a very rigorous, we spent a lot of time on rigor and nobody was taking the assessment. So it's kind of like balancing that out, saying like, I'm an expert at this thing. What you're doing is fine. We can like shortcut in this thing. Yeah, I think that goes back to the question people asked too about soft skills in psychology. Like, I feel a lot of that was like saying like, hey, we could do the math and we could roll out something very mathy, but actually like soft skills, we should just focus on users and just patch in like the quickest, most reasonable thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Travis, I see you just put a question into the chat if you want to jump in.
Sure. That's a question I like to ask other data science leaders. What you look for in data science resumes, cover letters, what your screening process is like. It seems like every time we post something these days at our work, we get tons and tons of resumes. And the screening process is hard because there are lots of really, really good candidates out there. Do you have like a quick method, you know, like, or do you triage things? I don't know. What are the flags you look for typically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I'm always really interested in like, can this person create a slideshow? Like it's like Hugo Bown Anderson in his article, like what data scientists do according to like 35 data scientists, said something like, yeah, like maybe the most important skill is like making a slideshow. I think that's important, is like, can they communicate? Do we think they could like sit with the team and actually like understand its goals and work with the PM? But then as to how you screen for that, I have no idea. Actually, I'm really stumped. That's like what I'd love to have insight into. I think it's really hard to get at. The other thing is that I'm a strong believer that in fast, live, real-time data analysis, that not enough do we like have a data scientist just try to pull our data. Like companies, data scientists and companies really vary in their ability to just answer questions from data live. I think that's a really important skill for being able to drive the ship and gain the trust of like a PM. So, and I think like a good example of this is Dave Robinson is an R user, uses the tidyverse, and he feels comfortable enough to just live analyze data for an hour a week on YouTube. I think that's so important that a person can do that fast. It's like a communication skill, basically. Like, do you have enough data science fluency to communicate with data like a conversation with a person? And that's kind of why I started. So I maintain a port of dplyr to Python called Suba. And that's a lot of why I started porting it, is because I was working with really good R users who could analyze data in real time. And I just couldn't do it in Python. I think that's critical, basically. How you measure it, I don't know. I think there are a lot of ways you could do it with like realistic scenarios and tests. I don't think people should be subjected to that kind of like pressure in an interview necessarily. Like you know, you have like laser eyes on them and want them to analyze data. That would probably like be a really stressful thing for a lot of people. But I think that skill somehow has to be like sussed out and enter the picture. You could have you could have a lot of good data scientists who can't do this, and that's okay too. But I think all orgs need like these people, basically.
Yeah, those are great answers. Thanks.
I see there's a lot of great thoughts in the chat, and I had a similar question to yours, Tatsu, because I know like if something looks really nice, like the same way if a Shiny app or data visualization looks really nice, you might think it's better than something else. And Tatsu, you asked a question about appearance, if you want to jump in.
I'm thinking like this is a case where like reading the book by its cover actually does matter, right? Like in this specific case where you're a data scientist, you have to be able to like take data, make it appear in a way that's digestible to people, right? So I would almost think that it's true, but I don't know what you think, Michael.
Yeah, I think for like a designer, your resume is kind of a portfolio in a way, because a data scientist won't just be in a cave, they'll be actually interfacing with people. So how they present this like how they give you this initial glimpse into who they are, in a lot of ways is a very data sciencey interaction. I think you're onto something. But I also realize people don't have a ton of time to make resumes, so I can see the value of like presenting them with a problem, right? That lets them kind of like bring that to bear. I like
Yeah, I was gonna say I like Travis's comment of like you could spot if somebody's made their resume without worked out. I think that's a good screener.
For sure. I see, Alice, you had a comment in the chat. Do you want to jump in?
If I can unmute, yeah. Hey,
Hi.
No, I think that I just wanted to like circle back on the idea of like screening resumes is super challenging because you get basically, you have no idea why somebody applied based on them sending you like a document they send to like 100 other companies. So I really like the idea of having people answer like one or two screening questions, which actually gets at like the kind of key criteria that you're looking for a job, or forces somebody to respond to like specifically what you're looking for. And you get that kind of customized, like, okay, what I'm looking for is how curious is somebody really about this position? How engaged are they? Are they really interested in working in this industry? Or did they get like a LinkedIn saying like, hey, you should apply to this job? Because I've talked to candidates, like I get on the phone with them and I'm like, hey, why did you apply to this job? And they were like, oh, it came up on my LinkedIn. And I was like, oh my God, no, that's not what I need. So I don't know if there are better platforms or ways to get people to like, yeah, I love cover letters too. If somebody sends a cover letter, it's like an automatic conversation with me. So yeah, if there are ways and platforms and things to get like some sort of gauge on like more than just a resume, that's priceless.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a tough one. I will say too, like one thing that worries me about using the resume is so like one weird fact about me is I did grad school at Princeton, but I'm a real barbarian. I actually had no idea like what Princeton was before I went. My advisor basically just pitched me there. And the only reason I bring this up is like I didn't know that grad students went to school for free at Princeton. And so when first I almost didn't apply there because I legitimately believed they would charge me an incredible amount of money. And two, when I was there, I was so freaked out because no one told me that it was free. And so I was like sitting through the like interviews and like the visit, like with this freaky problem just hanging over me. And so I think with resumes and just jobs, there's that whole thing is like the less spooky we can be, like actually like at the point that a person submits a resume, we haven't even probably queued them to what we want. So like that's why one hesitation of using the resume itself beyond maybe like a broad kind of entry point is that as a company, it's probably our responsibility to really very clearly tell people what we're like evaluating them on and just helping them appreciate actually what is being used in the process. So that I do think the resume is really is a reflection of kind of data science skill to a degree, but my one hesitation is that like once we actually bring people into the interview, that we have the chance to like tee them up on our expectations. And so I think everything prior to that, I would kind of just in terms of like equity and where people come in from, be careful to really like be super critical of.
Great point, Michael. I see, Libby, you had a great idea from your cover letter, and a lot of people are commenting on it. So I'd love for you to share that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about that. So last year, and to preface this statement, like I'm a career switcher. So like I'm in my mid to late 30s, and I was having to find an internship last year, and finding an internship in your 30s is weird. It's hard. It's like people see your resume that's full of lots of experience and think like, why is this person applying for a resume or applying for an internship? So I attended a talk that was led by Polly Mitchell Guthrie at Kinaxis, which is a Canadian company, supply chain analytics software company. And I noticed that she happened to be hiring an intern in strategy. She's the VP of thought leadership and industry outreach. I was like, how cool is that? That's amazing. My undergrad is very supply chain oriented. So I reached out to her, asked her a little bit about the position, let her know I was interested. and then applied. And in my cover letter, I added kind of in the place of one of my paragraphs, you have a few small paragraphs in a cover letter. And at the end of my paragraphs, I was like, I feel really passionate about XYZ. And if you have the time to watch this very quick 2-minute YouTube video, I think it'll explain why I'm passionate about it, and had just a little link to my video. And I got the job, and that was definitely what sealed the deal. Like, everybody told me, I can't believe you made a video for your cover letter. That's amazing. We've never seen that before. I had some like quick animations in there that I did on my iPad. It was nothing fancy. And I actually recorded the video the day after I got my COVID vaccine. So I was really sick. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real and authentic, and, you and connected to, like, I talked directly to her. I was like, hi, Polly, how's it going? In my video. I highly recommend that for anybody who wants them to get across, but it wouldn't have worked if I hadn't had her email, if I hadn't attended her talk, if I hadn't reached out to her and been an actual person.
I love that, Libby. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, that's super cool. 2
I
minutes is also so nice. It's like you can just open it on your phone and see.
Yeah, I don't think I'd recommend more than a minute or 2 minutes, right? Show people you value their time.
Yeah. I'm scrolling through all of the cheers to you, Libby, and to find the other questions. Let's see. Was there anything I missed earlier? Oh, I see Jackie, you just asked a question. Do you want to jump in? Or I can read the question too. And if you want to add more context, feel free to jump in. But it was, what do you think of having an online portfolio or Shiny app?
If you can do it, I mean, the more kind of like stuff people can see and interact with, the better. If the code's on GitHub, it's super handy to have. I don't know that people will read through it in detail, but even its existence is, I think, really a big indicator that, I mean, you've got like a portfolio of work that you were able to put up, which is probably what you'll be doing a lot as a data scientist, is like pushing up projects and stuff. So
definitely. I know Javier had talked about doing that before. I don't know if Javier's on, but let's see, George. Oh, there you are.
I was just about to say, Javi is definitely on.
Yeah, this actually, I don't think I got the current job I'm in right now because of this, but speaking to a team of people that had been surrounded by data their whole careers, who weren't really that familiar with, R as the programming language or some of the capabilities of like Shiny, I think, I built a pretty lightweight Shiny app using the BSlib framework and thematic and a few other popular packages, and it kind of blew their mind. And I think that's just, the nature of them being surrounded by like Excel dashboards or, like kind of Tableau can make amazing things, but the Tableau dashboards I usually see in production are just to kind of summarize data quickly. Like, they serve a very useful function, but they're not really aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion. So sharing kind of a real lightweight, Shiny app went a long way. They told me afterwards, they were like, that app went all over the company. We're so happy that you made that. So I themed it as if it was their product. So I took like their logo and their color scheme, and I made the whole Shiny app look as if it was, a Bloomreach like data product.
That's amazing. I was looking for the link that we had shared on a past Hangout when you shared that, but I'm not good at multitasking here. So, George, I see you had your hand raised too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that last point that you made there, Javier, on putting it into their brand and their style and it being on topic is the most important thing. I think from my experience, it's really difficult to choose like just a general thing that shows you can do data science. Like most data scientists, I'd say, can see the sort of the broader aspect of what you can do with data and stuff, but take it outside anyone there. And even though you've done something really impressive with numbers, producing really good results, if it's not in their domain, people are really bad, I think, at seeing the transferable skills, and that's my biggest experience. So in terms of having demos, I think they're really good, and I wanted to get some up on my website portfolio and that sort of thing, and I always sort of struggle to choose the right one. And actually, I just got to make a decision and get something up. But it's that sort of thing as well. I think it's like if you're going for like your dream job, you kind of almost have to really fire it up and make it really specialized to that, because in my experience, if you go into a insurance company or a banking company or whatever with your favorite sport, and you've taken all the data and you've brought it together and you've put out this really kick-ass graphic, and then they just all look at it and go, yeah, but we do banking? You're like, yeah, but it's just numbers. It's all just numbers. Like, can you not see it? I find it so frustrating that people can't just see that you can just do all this with numbers and it's transferable to every business and every company and every hobby in the world. Yeah, that's my thing. Yeah,
that's an awesome point, George. I know an hour is going by extremely quickly. And I see, Brittany, you asked a great question in the chat a little bit earlier. Would you want to jump in?
Sure, I can jump in. So I think I've heard this question a lot around like having some sort of portfolio. And I'm just, because I keep hearing it more and more often, I think I just love to ask the room, do you think it's becoming one of those things that's more and more important, that maybe people should think about prioritizing time to create if they're looking in the job market? And if they are, what kinds of things do you think that we should be including in that portfolio? Is it just very simple like data analysis? Is it like maybe actually doing more of a Shiny app? Is it more of like an actual model and like full out model building process? Like if someone wants to invest the time, what do you think they should do to do that wisely?
Any thoughts, Michael or Larry? I see you have your hand raised.
Cool. Yes, I'm on. All right. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this one. With the projects, I've noticed that I'm more on the consulting side, but with the projects, if I hire somebody to help me on a project, I'm looking at how they go through the process. So I ask them if they have a project that they did to gather data. I ask them if they have a project that they did to clean the data. Then I ask them the analyze, the visualization, maybe a slide deck. And if they can walk through that whole process, then I can see they can do the whole process from beginning to end, gathering data. They can go find data sets, use them, apply them, combine them, and then get insight out of them. That's the projects I look for, but I'm more on the freelance side. So I don't know if that helps, but those are what I'm looking at.
Thanks, Larry.
I like Tatsu's comment about having your name .shinyapps.io is a signal. So true. A lot of times, though, if I'm not hiring for a Shiny developer, that might not be relevant. Something that does help a lot, though, is if they have a site, maybe through Netlify with GitHub, something like that. Things like the new postcards package helps just make that possible. Even just a one-pager just shows that they care about kind of making our Markdown and other HTML documents, things like that, talk to each other. It's really helpful to know.
Yeah, I think it's also such a great way to get feedback, like from people. Like if, I think portfolios are nice. One, it's like a victory lap. You get to show off like all your hard work. So that's, I think that's super nice. I think two is like applying for jobs. I think applying for jobs, it's so nice to find like other people who like are also looking for data science jobs or working as data scientists. And then a portfolio, even I would see the silver, like the nice thing is even versus like sending it to a company you're applying to, being able to connect with people and like show your work to them and like, you know, like talk about it and work on stuff. I think that's also a really exciting piece. I think the portfolio is huge.
Awesome. Brittany, was part of the question about like knowing what the project should be that you work on for them too, or?
Yeah, I think Larry gave some insight, and a couple others did too, but just, it sounds like it's a little more of what we might consider the basics and not so like super fancy, crazy modeling types of things. And okay.
Yeah, I would start like just by even boxing your time and deciding like how long you want to spend on it, and then work backwards. Because the biggest risk is that the projects never happen. Like that, and I know this is true for me. Like I just want to end up creating the perfect project, but if I block my time to like one day, you know, that then at least you can just get something out, and then like it. I think it also really sharpens thinking around like how much is good enough.
I know Tori just dropped, but she had a great comment in the chat too. And I think this is an awesome like other side effect of it, but it's like if you are creating that shiny app, or like Libby did with the YouTube video, and they're sharing it around the company, that's also amazing for building relationships across the company even before you start. And then recognizing who you are. It's really cool. I see Javier, you have a question. I know we're a minute over, and just want to make sure, Michael, you have a few other minutes.
Yeah. Is
okay.
Should I?
Oh no, I just see Javier put it in if you want to read it.
Sure. Yeah, I think
yeah, I can. The question's just like, how are you staffed? How does RStudio staff you onto, you know, new projects? Like, are you working on multiple problems at the same time, or is it more like, you know, you're personally very curious about some aspect of the tidyverse that you want to kind of dive deeper and try to improve, or like, how does that kind of staffing model work at RStudio?
Yeah, so I'm probably not the best person, as I've been here for like a few months, but I think, I mean, the tidyverse team is just so great and self like motivated. I mean, I think everyone on the team is sort of like a fanatic in a way, like they have a problem that they really want to solve. They're very much like, they remind me a lot of researchers. And so really, I think a lot of it seems to fall out pretty naturally, that it's pretty weird for people to have like this kind of focus, like Thomas on ggplot2. Like you're just not going to see that level of dedication, I think, a lot. And so I think that like the hard part is kind of done, I think, with a lot of people on the team. It's like people with weird obsessions. So I have to say, like, I don't know why I've just been dedicated to porting tools to Python for the past 3 years. Like I use Python a lot, but wish I was using the tidyverse. And so it's like, with that, just knowing that I've been working on this for 3 years, it like falls out pretty naturally, like figuring out what's a good thing to work on. And I'm working with Julia Silgay right now, and to her credit, she's like incredibly great and, you know, like flexible and interested in finding the right thing. So I think it's a lot about maybe people chasing their weird, very specific R Python related obsessions, if that makes sense. It's a great team. It seems very autonomous, and I would say kind of weird in its focus, that people have very specific, incredible focuses.
Thanks, Michael.
Mm.
Thank you. Michael, before we go, I want to ask you about some of the things that you're working on, or things we should be keeping an eye on or checking out as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. I should have brought this up early. So I'm working with Julia Silgay and Isabel Zimmerman on model ops. So this is like, how can we make it really easy to go from a trained model to something you're able to serve, so people can actually, right, like interact with, or a service can use it, say like on a platform. And so that's been really exciting to see. Like a lot of the tidy models is focused on like making it easy to train models, you know, and do all that. And then that last kind of like step or mile, which is like getting it off your computer onto somewhere else, and running as, say, like a web application. So I've been really excited about that. And then I would say just working on Python tools in general. I've been really excited to almost like I love the insights that people in the tidyverse have. So to almost like think about what's like some of the like magic that they've captured that we can bring into Python to make data science a delight. And the one thing I'll say there is data science tools in Python are really interesting because I think in general, the engineering tools in Python are incredible. So like a lot of the pieces like people in the tidyverse had to build out, like the foundational pieces are there. I think it's just the tidyverse like API and the high level flow would bring so much. So yeah, super excited to work on that type of stuff.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michael. I see Tatsu was sharing a few links in the chat for us to check out as well. But thank you all so much for joining today and for all the great questions too. Hopefully see you all back next week as well. But Michael, a huge thank you to you for filling in here last minute as well. Really appreciate you sharing your experience with us too.
Yeah,
no, we haven't got a chance to talk at RStudio too.
Yeah,
so
good
great
to meet
really
you.
Meet you.
No, thanks for the opportunity. I think it's super great having a bunch of people in a room just talking about the weird corners of data science.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.